Okay. Um, as folks begin to come on in, we can kick it off with just a little introduction. So, hi everyone, my name is Nea Richard. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the research fellow with SisterSong. And this is a series that we have been doing titled Research in Action to just talk more about what research looks like in RJ, what community research and community principles within research looks like within RJ. And we are super excited to have a discussion tonight titled Reproductive Justice in Action, Black, Queer, and Building Our Families. We are joined here by our wonderful panelists, and I will not do their introductions for them. I will allow them to do the introductions for themselves. But just wanted to welcome you in and thank you all for joining with us this evening. And then I will pass it on. Who would like to introduce themselves first, if that's okay? Here, let's go with Dr. Shemeka. Would you like to take it away?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Shemeka Thorpe. I am an assistant professor in health promotion, sexuality researcher, and educator. And I am the principal investigator of this research study, the Art for Hope study. And I'm super excited to be here.
I love that. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Thorpe. Dr. Praise, would you like to take it away?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having us. My name is Dr. Praise Iyiewuare. I'm a clinical psychologist and a postdoc at the University of Kentucky, and I am the lead for the Art for Hope expanded study, which was focused on Philadelphia and the DMV area.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Super excited. Dr. Frazier, passing the mic to you.
Hello, how y'all doing? My name is Dr. Misha Frazier. My pronouns are she, her, doc. Thank you so much for coming out today. I appreciate y'all for spending time with us. I am the founder of Misha's Room, which is a space for intentional education and identity reflection that basically uses creative expression to support folks in purposely pursuing pleasure as an act of resistance. Um, excuse me, I was the creative director for the Art for Hope art exhibition, which happened in Kentucky in Louisville. And I'm excited to continue to have this conversation today.
Yeah. Okay. And then also passing the mic down to, would we like to go with Brittany first, or would we like to go Richella? Yeah.
Absolutely. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brittany Washington. We are the Washingtons. My pronouns are she and her. We are the participants from the research study for Art of Hope.
And I am Rachella again, the other half of the Washingtons. And again, we are the participants, and we are so happy to be here.
I love that. So as you can see, folks, we have a wonderful panel lined up to have a beautiful discussion about the work that is going on with Art for Hope and what it looks like to build our families in this day and age. So I will share my screen now, and I want to introduce the panel today with a brief project overview of Art for Hope. So I'm going to share my screen and then I'll ask. Give me 1 second. There we go. And then let me put this in presentation mode. Okay, I don't know why presentation mode is hiding from me. I'm sorry, y'all. Is it okay if I slide it to the side like this? Yeah. Okay, cool. So would you all feel comfortable sharing a bit more about your work and your research with Art for Hope?
Yeah, I can introduce the team. So you met some of us already, but this study was started in 2024. I'm like, what year is it? 2024. And the Art for Hope study was created because we realized that there was a gap in basically fertility and family planning as it related to Black queer couples, Black lesbian couples, Black female same-sex couples. and we wanted to fill that. So I do want to shout out Dr. Mignon Moore, who has done an impactful work with Invisible Families and writing that book, and it definitely motivated us to continue to do research. And so in 2024, we received a grant from the University of Kentucky through the Unite Research Priority Area to continue this work. And so we interviewed couples in North Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, Philly, Maryland. I think that's it, right? Okay. We interviewed couples and we spent so much time with people in their homes, in the library, in public spaces, at work. And so, as you'll see here, is some of us that are already here, but as well as our team from UGA, Dr. April Fudimo, and then also our research assistants as well. So definitely want to shout them out and just be thankful for the team that we had that did this work. And Misha, I'll turn it over to you if you want to introduce the videos.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind. You can go to the next slide if possible. So, as a part of the interactive art exhibit that we had, we also had a short documentary that was kind of playing on the loop for folks to be able to watch, which featured some different clips from the interviews. It was important for us to highlight this part because we really wanted to make sure that the participants' voices and stories and actual narratives came across. And so people would be able to actually hear what the folks had to say and to see if they'd be able to connect with some of those different experiences. And so we have a couple different videos of a few of the different couples that talk about some of their experiences, and they'll have some of the questions that the couples are answering that'll show up on the screen when you press play on the videos.
Would you like for me to go ahead and play the videos? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah, you can play the video.
Um, one of the doctors talked about advocating for yourself in a way that felt approachable to me. Just some of the tools that she offered just felt more approachable. I'm a person who will advocate anyway. Like, I don't have a problem with saying something, but I know it doesn't always, especially in clinical settings, come across. There's a politic in clinical settings, and I know I don't always fall into that politic. So I felt like some of the tools that she offered were really helpful in how to be more approachable in clinical settings. And that was helpful for me because it left me feeling like I could ask my questions in a way that would help me get what I need. So I would say find the tools that you need in order to be able to make sure that you're asking your question and that you are saying what's really happening, and that you are advocating for yourself without hesitation. I think the other thing that I would say is really make sure that your relationship is healthy. And while I think that's wise before children anyway, this is a process that you want to be really aligned about. And I can say that I think in my own experience, it was very positive for our relationship because we were very aligned. And I think that there are times where sometimes we put the cart before the horse, even when due diligence can take time. And even as the person who likes timelines, I did not get my timeline, but I got the benefit of our work. And I'm really, really grateful for that. It was far better for me, for her, for our hearts, for our minds, for our spirits. And I think that supported our bodies. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, it makes me want to find it, but that's all I got right now. I agree with everything you said. I think that one thing I would say a little bit more about is define what healthy is, right? Like, And without the influence of social media and the people around you, what does healthy look like for your relationship? And it's not just that we agree that we want to have a kid together and we want to be parents and we've been to therapy a couple of times. That's probably not it. That's probably the baseline. I think the other thing I would say is while there's a lot of information out there, there are a lot of people that are sharing their stories. This journey is your journey. It's not other people's journey. Yeah. And so there will be some things that feel surprising because other people didn't mention it or you didn't expect it. And I think that you have to leave room for your own experiences to evolve in the way that they will evolve. And when those things happen, when those challenges occur, when it feels uncomfortable, to lean into the relationship, but also lean into your communities and the people that know you and the people that support you now and will continue to support you, and pull them closer, and be okay sharing it with them.
In addition to sharing collective wisdom and some nuggets of joy and love and like their actual experiences, we also had couples share some experiences of medical racism that they had when they were going throughout their fertility experiences or their fertility journeys. And these next two videos are some examples of some of the couples who shared some components related to that. So you could play this one. Thank you.
I'm gonna go full screen, sorry.
It still doesn't have
My
sound.
sound isn't on plan.
Someone said the sound wasn't working.
Yeah, it's not working.
Let me.
So
Does it
they were
work from
both
this angle?
Caucasians.
No.
But the lady that actually delivered my son, she was Russian. And I actually wanted to switch.
It's not playing anymore. Or the sound isn't on.
Oh, you have to stay unmuted.
That's right. Okay. Technical difficulty, sorry, y'all. We'll start it
Up
over.
here, so
Continue to share.
so they were both Caucasians. But the lady that actually delivered my son, she was Russian. And I actually wanted to switch to her as my primary doctor at Norton's, but they would not let me. They said, well, you have to call, both of them have to agree and you have to talk to the head person up here. So I'm talking to the head lady and she's like, well, there's nothing guaranteeing, like, we have to look into it and all of this. I'm like, this lady literally almost killed me. Like I almost died. I could have died multiple times while giving birth because she just did not have my health in her brain. Like she just wanted to do what she wanted to do. Yes. So I was like, the fact that the process was going like that. And then the lady was like, well, even if we do switch, like this doctor could still be a chance at delivering your baby because if she's on call. I was like, you want to know what? You're right. Take me out your system. I don't even want to be here anymore because it was like, I don't know if she was saying it to get smart or be informative, but it was very informative for me because I was like, I didn't even think about that. And I don't want her to be in charge of me. So I switched and yeah.
I like this video because it highlights how much the participants were willing to be brave and to advocate for themselves and to be transparent in that in general. And so it was really important for me to highlight that one. And then this next video that also talks about some of the participants' experiences with discrimination um, in the healthcare facilities. You could play this one.
I'm talking about it, seeing why the one who was looking at me crazy when I was on the table screaming.
Yeah.
Like, clearly, I'm in pain. I'm here in pain, and she was just like looked like something was wrong with me.
Yeah.
I think she definitely was a racist.
Was what?
In the wrong job.
Right. Was that were you supposed to be medicated during that process?
No.
Okay.
You take ibuprofen, which I did.
Yeah.
But then also, like, you put the saline in very slowly.
So just to highlight the fact that this participant was in pain and hollering and asking for medical support in this particular space and was being ignored, but then also willing to name that this was blatant misogynoir and racism that she was experiencing also was something that we felt important to highlight. But it wasn't all just the negative things that people experienced in in that space. She could go to the next slide. Um, the actual art exhibit itself, the A Legacy of Love art exhibition, ended up being a beautiful event. The room was full of tears when it occurred. Some of these are photos of the actual event itself, where we had some participants come in. We had three different couples come and they were on a panel and they discussed some of their experiences. We also invited some Black reproductive specialists to come into that space too. We had a reproductive psychologist, Dr. Wiata came, and that was amazing. We also had midwife Mika come, and they were on a panel to be able to talk and to be a resource and a reference for all of the attendees to be able to have a dialogue or a conversation about it. And we also had some reflective response art there by a Black queer art therapist. And it ended up being a really, really beautiful experience for us to share and to learn and to experience joy and to talk about those real experiences. And then you can go to the next slide and I'll pass it on to Dr. Praise to talk about the dissemination for the expanded study.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Misha. You mentioned that there were tears in the room for the Kentucky event. Some of those tears were mine. It was a really beautiful space, and it was just so impactful to be part of the work in that way, and then to lead the expanded study, which was focused on Black queer women couples in Philly and in the DMV area. And so I led that study with Dr. Bernice DeRosa, who is pictured with me here, like a true millennial. I'm like holding up a peace sign in the picture. And for the event that we did, we partnered with Asada's House, which is an organization in West Philadelphia that focuses on Black women and femmes and providing care and rest for Black women and femmes. And so there are multiple parts to the event that happened. We provided a brochure that not only talked about the results of the study, but also provided different resources. So thinking about financial resources for folks who want to build their families, as well as different mental health and social support resources too. In the event, while we were talking about these different things, there were multiple things that folks who attended could experience. There was a sound bath going on that was really wonderful. People fell asleep during the sound bath. There were massages by three Black women licensed massage therapists, and folks could sign up for 20-minute massages. And then if you go to the next slide, these were also some of the things that happened in the event too. So the person who's sitting next to me is Rayla, and she's the person who runs the status house. And so there was a community altar as well, where there was an altar for rest and care. Mind you, it was wintertime. It was December 2025 when we held this event. So, you know, it was cold outside. Folks are trying to be warm, be cozy. And so we really had that in mind when we put together the gift baskets or the gift bags for folks who attended the event. And so we provided folks with hats and really warm scarves and fuzzy socks, just really thinking of comfort and care that people who are going through this process might need and want, and wanting to provide that for attendees as well. There was a PowerPoint slide with quotes from participants that was included, and then there was also Reiki for folks who wanted to try that, and produce of different sorts. So eggs, fruit, butter, lemon, garlic, carrots, like all these different types of things. And so it was a beautiful space and a beautiful time where we really focused on rest and restoration, knowing that the path of using art to build your family, using assisted reproductive technology to build your family can be so stressful in different ways, and thinking about what we can do to provide comfort and care.
Out my share. Thank y'all so much for one, the work, right? Thank you also for the overview of the work. I think the study in itself is I say because I believe it is a study that lives on. Um but it's very beautiful. And I appreciate the intentionality that it looks like it showed through the work that y'all did. So I want to ask a little question, ask another question, a follow-up question is how and what has reproductive justice looked like for you all when thinking about creating and implementing the study?
Yeah, I think for me, initially I started thinking about whose voices are not heard and who's left out of the room. So when we walk into rooms related to fertility or related to maybe even like abortion care, I feel like Black queer women's experiences aren't often represented. And so it was important to me that that was there, even when we're talking about fertility. And, it's not necessarily that Black queer women experience infertility. Some just experience what we call social infertility, which is the idea that you can't have children because you're not in a heterosexual relationship, right? So that's like social infertility, but it's not that biologically you may or physically you may be infertile. And so I think for me, reproductive justice came about when making sure that we're centering the voices of the people who are most marginalized, and making sure that their experiences are told, especially as it relates to healthcare and support and support needs, as well as, just how do we show up for one another in doing this work. And I think reproductive justice and Black feminism overall was important to this project because this project required a lot of care. I will always say this was like the most rewarding and emotionally taxing project I've ever led in my life. And it was a beautiful project, and I love everything about this project. But there's a lot of care that had to go into this project for each of us, from participants that were sharing their stories with us, to Dr. Frazier, who was going through all the interviews to make the art for a whole clips, to Dr. Praise, who is taking over and doing things and doing lead-in interviews in Philadelphia and in Maryland. It took a lot for us to do this project, and we had to often reflect with each other and debrief. And so I think reproductive justice was just as important as Black feminism was throughout this project.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Um, I want to take time to talk to the Washingtons, right? So we talk about what it looks like to have folks in the room. We are lucky to have folks in the room tonight. So, I'm curious from your point of view, what did family building mean to you, before this, and how has that shifted after this project and, throughout your process?
Um, Again, we just definitely want to start off by saying thank you for having us. Definitely was a joy to be a part of something this big. For me, or for us, I should say, I don't think our thoughts changed after being participating in it. I feel like if anything, it solidified what we already knew, and was glad again to be a part of this movement, because like Dr. Shemeka said, it's always our voices are not heard, and it is sad that so much has to happen to us in order for us to be taken serious. So I can honestly say, after participating in this, I again just feel like we know we're on the right side of science, and we're again glad to be in the numbers, to be honest, because as much as as much as we know what goes into building our family, being in the same sex relationship, we also understand that at the end of the day, there is a little privilege that also comes with that, because it does take so much. And it is important that you do, like one of the participants said in their video earlier, to ensure that home is sturdy, because this is a roller coaster. You'll never know what you're going to get. And at the end of the day, you're always going to be fighting. It's always going to be fighting the problem with your partner. So it's just definitely important. And I like when she said that, because it is important to make sure home front is good and steady before even jumping into this, because it is a lot. It's a rewarding thing, but it is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A follow-up question, if you don't mind. Would you mind giving us more details about what the family building process has looked like for y'all?
Sure. So we've been together for 8 years, married for 5. I always have to ask that because I can never, after that your first year, everything else
Time
is
flies when you're having fun. That's it. That's exactly it.
exactly. We knew from the beginning, starting dating, that we knew family was important to us, our individual family. So we knew we would put just as much work into our own family. Of course, at that time, we didn't know the nooks and crannies of what that would look like to get us to where we want to be. But we knew it would be a process, and we knew at the end of the day, that is what we wanted. So we started this journey back in 2022. I am a Googler. I'm a researcher. So for me, advocating, since we were talking about that, was, just me kind of learning as much as I could on my level, right? Because I can't advocate for myself if I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to know. And a part of this in this journey is sometimes those resources and information is not readily available to us. So I've always been kind of looking ahead at certain stuff. So when we did decide that we wanted to go ahead and start that journey, for me, I did think it was important to find a clinic that was LGBTQ friendly, or already had or marketed that, only because of the times that we were in. Looking back now, I'm glad we did, and I'm glad it was a really good decision. I don't think that it would have swayed any left or right if not, because again, that could just be an opportunity for us to make that available in another facility if need be. I don't think we had any initial issues with once we started, because again, our clinic was LGBTQ friendly. And so a lot of the paperwork and questionnaires, and even most of the staff were already familiar with working within our community. So that was a plus. We did have 1 or 2 of those doctors or nurses that have been doing this for years. So they're like kind of stuck in where they are, that you kind of would have to correct every now and then. But the overall experience of the clinic we use, I don't think we had any issues. It took us 6 cycles to finally get pregnant. We did 4 IUI cycles, and then 2 IVF cycles. So we did 2 IVF transfers before it finally stuck. And we ended up getting pregnant in 2023. And now we have an almost 2-year-old son that is the joy, and he is such an amazing toddler. Like I cannot even imagine life at this point without him. Just to backtrack our hospital story, again, I think we kind of blessed, and this is too, while I was kind of glad that we were kind of chosen for this as well, because in my research and anything that I looked into, all you do see is the negative all of the time, but that doesn't always have to be everybody's case. So in most situations, I kind of went into already assuming or expecting the worst, because that's what I saw. But I think the majority of our experiences have been quite pleasant and positive. So I'm very much excited about this, because I do want to be able to share the good stuff, because not all of it is bad. But I understand, because of where we are and the way the world is, and what all is going on, that is the majority. But our hospital was great. our nurses, I do believe this was their first same-sex couple pregnancy, which was interesting, only because they were asking all of the questions. And we're open books. So we are very much, ask us, because we gonna tell it all. We love to tell our story. So we spent I was induced. So we were in the hospital for 3 days. I was in labor for 3 days before I finally gave birth. So we did spend a lot of time with our nurses having conversations because they were asking questions, which is it's surprising, but definitely exciting for it to be 2025. So, especially since we went through so much to get to that point, to get almost at the end of the road, that, to not have that negative stereotype now hovering over us when we have already been through so much privately, and figuring out how we can even continue on to another cycle, continue on with purchasing our medication, because of course insurance doesn't cover any of this. I did the numbers, crunched the numbers after our initial interview with Dr. Shemeka, and it was almost $36,000 for just to be where we are now. So again, we are thankful that, we were able to, advocate for ourselves by doing our own research and finding resources that, that could alleviate anything that we possibly could have went through had, we not known about. But to get to the end at the hospital delivery and still have a pleasant delivery based off of, where we came from, definitely was, I would do it again, but babe, how do you think? How are you?
I would agree. First and foremost, I'm proud of my wife because I'm the one that usually does all the talking, but she beats them out. So not much to add from me. It was a welcome experience. We were kind of a little nervous. Obviously, our location, we live in Johnston County here in North Carolina. And historically, there are some racial connotations that still coincide exist in our communities, but surprisingly, to our surprise, the staff was very hands-on. I probably would say our experience was exceptional, just because I feel like because we were unique in this situation, the staff kind of paid a little bit extra attention, if that makes sense. Because as my wife has already said, they were definitely intrigued with this experience and wanted to know more. So that was welcomed, and we were happy to share that. And so even from the clinic, like it was very personal. We didn't feel like a number. We didn't feel dismissed. So it was we had a very fortunate experience, and we're both thankful for it.
I love that. Thank y'all for sharing. You both mentioned a good bit about advocacy, right? And us on the panel here know that you all have been sharing your experience on social media, but could you talk more and let our audience and our participants just, I guess my question is, how has the experience been sharing your story and your experience on social media? Yeah.
So it's been great. So we have a couples page, and the Washington Way on Instagram, and we also have a YouTube page. The handle's the same across the board, the Washington Way. And we're actually in the works of recording our birth story, because again, I feel like the positive side of this also light needs to be shined on that as well. While we did run into some hiccups and some trials along the way, again, it was just that you just have to keep going, because again, we understand that, when we want what we want, and just because we are in the same sex relationship, that shouldn't defeat us from stopping and going for what it is that we want. So unfortunately, because it takes us doing different routes to get there. I do believe it is important for us to have these conversations and engage into these communities, because there may be somebody out there that may, can be scared to even start because they don't know, or be scared to even start because there is so much negative out there, that they don't even want to put themselves in where they could be. So I love sharing our story, for that reason, because again, like I said, with me doing my own research throughout the 2 years of us before we started and just going back and forth from the clinic, all I saw was the negative of, everything that does come with it. But it does take a strong person to still continue to do so, when you already feel defeated or deflated in just trying to gather everything that you might even need just to get started. So that's why I take joy in sharing our story, anytime we can, anytime we're asked, or when, people do ask questions, because for one, word of mouth does travel more, than anything else. So the more that we can continue to have these kind of discussions and continue to, every time our story gets shared, that's just one extra person that we feel like we can touch. And so I definitely take pride in, sharing, because some people don't like sharing, on the internet, but at the end of the day, technology is the new, that's just it. So we need to stick with the times. But like I said, we're open book. We love to tell our story. We're always posting our son. People do ask questions often, which I have no problem answering in DMs or, in our story. So we definitely take pride in being, like I said, on in the numbers, but on this side.
Yeah. And I'll just add, even back to our experiences in the fertility clinic, oftentimes we were probably for sure one of the rare same-sex couples in the clinic, but also the only people of color. So, being confident in yourself, having the courage to speak out when something doesn't seem right or that you don't quite understand, to ask for more clarification was critical. And even up to her giving birth and delivering. If something didn't feel right, pain pressure was high, or something just was off, we definitely were able to vocalize that, and thankfully the staff was very receptive to that. So that made us feel great as well, because it wasn't forced or pushed. They listened to exactly what our concerns and feedback were.
I love that. And it actually leads me into my next question, thinking about impact, right? And I want to open this question up to the entire panel so we can all take a second to answer. But what would you say impact looks like beyond this study? Like what does real life shifting look like for you all? Or yeah, I'll pause it there before we get into my follow-up. Also, thank you guys for we're getting a lot of love for you all in the chat here. So uh love to see folks loving on you.
I would say that impact looks like more people being informed of what Black queer family planning and what actual fertility journeys can look like, and some of the nuances of it. Like the Washington shared their research and saw a lot of negative things that happened. They didn't have that same experience, and other people need to know that and need to be aware of the possibilities. I vividly remember one of the couples that was actually on the panel when we had the event in Kentucky shared like they didn't spend any money. They did what they had to do to be able to do it as cheap and as free as possible. And they were very transparent about how they did that. Like, what resources did they use? What numbers did they call? And that's the kind of information that I would love for more people to have access to. And not just Black queer folks, but you have a gay cousin, like almost everybody got a gay cousin in some space, but to know this information, to have access to it, and to be able to share it with people that way is more readily available. I think that that advances reproductive justice. I also think that it makes it more accessible to community members, and it makes it not just relevant, but it lets people know that our experiences may be different, but they're just as valid, they're just as important, and they need to be discussed as well.
Yeah.
Love that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
No,
Nia.
no, you're fine. I was ad-libbing. Go ahead.
No, I just was gonna say, that really resonated with me, excuse me, what you said, Dr. Misha, and I was gonna add what came to me in terms of impact is expanded possibility. Knowing that it is possible to build your family, for Black queer women to build our families like in this way, and to also be able to see other people's journey and be able to understand that, okay, there are different journeys that people have gone through. And so while it might not be exactly what one person's journey might be for themselves, seeing other people's and knowing that you're not alone in this, I think is like one of the biggest things. Especially when you look at the literature, you look at what's out there and you don't see yourself represented, to be able to be like, oh, okay, but there are couples who have done this and who have done this in this time, who have done this recently, even though there are so many different oppressions and things that have gone on and continue to go on, you're making a way. And so to see how people to see how couples are making a way, and to be inspired to make your own way, I think is one of the biggest impacts that can be had.
I think for me, when I think about impact, I want people to know that they saw themselves in anything that we do related to this study. So, from who's doing the interviews to the ways in which we're doing this community dissemination, it's really important to me that people see themselves. And so I'm thinking about when we did the art exhibit in Kentucky, and someone came up to me and was like, "This is the first time I've ever seen an event for Black queer mothers in Kentucky, ever." And to me, that's what impact is. Like we created a space for people who often do not see themselves to be seen. We created a space for people's voices to be heard. And that we continue to do that. Because for me, I never want to be an academic that is just pulling stories from people and not giving back in any way, or not creating a platform for people to share information, or not creating seats at the table for other people. And so I think this project has had a beautiful impact thus far, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But most importantly, I'm excited that we've continued to just make sure that people feel represented, and they feel like their voices are important, and their stories are important, and their lives are important. And we get excited about the baby pictures, right? Like impact the babies. We get to see all the baby pictures. So that's also exciting as well. So I think this project has a legacy, throughout seeing people's fertility journeys, seeing them possibly have children or decide to adopt or decide to stop going through this process altogether. But there's legacy that is just continuing within the project and within the people that we've had the opportunity to speak to with this study.
I love that. Y'all have me over here showing all 32. But I'm grateful again for the work and also for the babies. Yes, for the babies. So you talked a bit about dissemination and how that has been a large part of this study and this work. I love the use of art in this work. But how did you, I mean, how important was it, or how did you prioritize community when thinking about ways to disseminate this work or your findings? And I can ask that in a more clear way if y'all need, because I know I
I got a little bit of it. I was really, really excited when Dr. Shemeka was like, this is her vision for how she wanted to potentially disseminate this information of the research. Then when I got into the research, I was like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. I tried to ensure that we centered community by making sure we displayed the actual participants' voices. Like, for example, some of the artwork that was featured in the exhibit itself were actual quotes from the participants study, like in the study. And a lot of those quotes shared details about their experiences, of course. And it was a lot of positive stuff that they experienced. There was some negative things that they experienced. It was words of wisdom that they passed on. I also was intentional about honoring my own elders, my grandparents, and my grandma living room, who has like a bunch of pictures everywhere. So we actually had photos of the couples, screenshots from like the actual interviews themselves, where we had them also send in pictures of them, sending pictures of the babies, and we had it featured all over at the exhibit as another way to make sure that we were honoring the community members that participated in the study. We also were intentional about putting the money that went into the event back into the Black community, primarily the Black queer community. So, like, for example, the venue that we hosted the event at, the caterer that we had, and also just the art therapist that was there. We had a lot of Black queer folks that were centered and want to make sure that we continue to support the community in those ways financially as well. We also compensated the participants because we want to be equitable and wanted to make sure we were actually practicing, hot girl science and implementing some of those tenets as well as Black feminist tenets in disseminating the research as well.
I was gonna drop it in the chat, but hashtag hot girl science. I need that on a t-shirt.
You really should cite the article.
Yes. Look, let me go do my own research and get into the bags. But thank you for highlighting that. Did anyone else want to speak on the impact and the intention behind community and dissemination? I absolutely love the way that you all went about it. Um, Go ahead, Dr.
Yeah, I can share a little bit from the Philly dissemination event perspective. I think we were very intentional about who we chose to work with and partner with for the event. Asada's House is an org, like I mentioned, in West Philly that really centers Black women in femmes, has done a lot of work around rest and care for Black women in femmes in West Philly, and also has ongoing programming for postpartum, Black postpartum folks in West Philly too. And so it just felt really aligned to do this with an organization that's already centering Black women and femmes, Black queer women and femmes, like in this way. I think also with the gift bags that we gave out, really thinking about comfort and how this is not like going through a fertility journey is not a comforting process. And so thinking about like I'm also a Taurus, and so like I think a lot about like material comfort sometimes, and so being able to give like warm hats, scarves that like felt good to the touch, fuzzy socks. People, anyone who knows me will tell you like I do love a good fuzzy sock, lotion, good lip balm, like things that like just bring comfort to the physical body when your physical body is going through so much in a fertility journey in many ways. Whether or not you are the person who is receiving the medication or whatever the case may be, like being able to do that and to partner with an org that was also bringing in massage therapists, that was bringing in a sound bath, that was really thinking about physical ways of embodying rest in such a time was really beautiful. So there was a lot of intention behind doing it in that way and partnering with an organization that was already thinking about these things. And where I could really sort of think about how can we use the funds that we have for this study to provide comfort in this way.
Love that. We got some Taurus love in the chat. Our season is among us, and I also, as I feel a Taurus, love a fuzzy sock. They need to change that sign from a bull to a fuzzy sock. But I appreciate that. I think there's so many levels to community care and the way we engage with community as researchers and the way that we create space for folks. So our chat is absolutely live. So I will ask my last panel question and then we will open it up to folks in the chat for questions. You all can utilize the Q&A portion on this screen, and we will get those um, in rotation. So for my last question, thinking about the study and your experiences and all that you've learned and all that you've shared, what would you say the one thing that you want to leave with folks about building Black queer families in today's age? I know that's a hard one. I'm gonna let y'all think.
I think for me, and being there, have done it, being on the other side of it at this point, definitely do it. Go for it because you deserve that thing. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to have what it is that you want. So don't let the negative stop you. Go for it. Go full throttle. I'm so excited. And even going through this, I would have never thought this would be where I would be 2.5 months, 2.5 years, or a year and a half after having our baby on this side, in this panel, having these conversations. So I never would have thought this would have come out of where we were 2.5 years ago while trying. So do it and don't stop until you get it because you deserve it.
I'll probably say stay encouraged, build a community around you, whether that's family, friends, folks that really support you, that encourage you, because this is as Dr. Frazier already said, a long journey and sometimes unpleasant. There's a lot of roller coaster emotions associated with the fertility progress and process as it stands. So having people in the corner that can support you, that can encourage you, can pray for you, can just come check on you, love on you in your ways and how you need it is very important. And happy to be a part of raising a young person is still tricky to this day, raising someone that's about to be in society very soon as their own individual and being a part of that and knowing that he is coming from a home of two loving moms, Black moms at that. That's important to us. And as you all have already alluded to, and certainly doing the work, that's important to us as well. And also as a fellow millennial, my boy has mastered the peace sign. So we lit.
She is so excited that he has learned that.
Dr. Praise, I'll send you a picture.
He loves that peace sign.
So,
and I want to see the picture.
I'll send you a picture. But, just once you get to that point where you can enjoy the journey, being grateful, we are a praying family. So we nurture that. And that's our true foundation to where we are today. So just grateful to be in the midst and to continue to push this work forward. And more importantly, happy to see Black women on the screen. I will say it and say it and say it. Black women on the screen that are pushing the work forward. And thankful to you all for having us a part of this.
I guess I will add to that. I mean, I don't have much to add other than what you said, which was just find your people and lean on them. And this is going to require a lot of vulnerability. And it can be uncomfortable to be that vulnerable sometimes with people. But know that that is important throughout this process. And I think from my perspective, I would also add for researchers that are interested in doing this work, we are in a difficult funding climate right now that makes it harder to do this work than it did for us when we started 2 years ago. And so I would say be encouraged, get creative, flip language, do whatever you need to do so you're making sure you're still having an impact on the communities you hope to serve. And find the people that are doing it and doing it well. We're all fighting systems right now. And so it's easy to be discouraged. I've been discouraged, but know that you can still get this work done and it is important. And, we see you as we're all battling this together. So I have seen the baby peace sign. It looks great. At one point, it was like the color purple, Sealy style. Better now. Better now. I love it. So.
I love that. We got a culture bear right there. You got to pass the torch. It's important. Dr. Misha, Dr. Praise, I wasn't sure if you all had anything that you wanted to leave us with before we got into questions.
My only thing that I would add, because that was absolutely amazing, would be to make sure that you are practicing mindfulness and taking care of yourself throughout the process. Because it's a journey, even like Dr. Shemeka shared, doing this work on this side of it was taxing emotionally. I was on this call, cry, almost about to cry, holding back tears several times, but being able to make sure that you are prioritizing caring for yourself, rather that's taking slow walks. I write poetry or like just deep breathing, but being able to make sure you pace yourself, practice patience, and take care of you at this time.
Yeah, I think the calls for community and caring for yourself are the two big things for me. We have one of our couples, we actually named them Family, friends as family. So that really big piece of having your friends as your support and your collaboration throughout this process. And it was beautiful to witness how they had kept their friends with them throughout this journey. And so I think finding your people, however they may show up, whoever they may be, um, is really big and important. And then, like I said, caring for yourself and all parts of yourself in different ways. There's something called the Blossom Healing Model, which I really appreciate, that talks about different components of wellness, from the financial side to the spiritual side to the physical body side to all these different things. If I can find it, I'll put it in the chat. But really, as people are going through this process, attending to each of those and knowing that some might be depleted at times and others might be high at times, but really kind of checking in with yourself individually and checking in with each other as a couple to see how things are going and where things are in the midst of the potential turbulence that happens with fertility journeys.
Thank y'all. I getting my cheek workout in over here today. Just so much joy, and great knowledge and honestly experience being shared on today's panel. So our first question, in our Q&A, and again, everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to utilize the Q&A portion. That is where we'll be asking questions from. So our first question is, how can we continue to support your work and what is next with the study?
Well, listen, the couples are ready for a tour, and I'm ready for a tour with them because summer is right around the corner. School's about to be over. Let's go on a tour. So we did the Legacy of Love exhibit in Kentucky. My hope is to do this nationwide, ideally, right? But first, I want to target all the states that we have done this work in. So making sure that we're disseminating this in North Carolina, and we're doing this in Georgia, and we're doing it in Maryland, and we're doing it in Philly. Like that is important. So we want to make sure we could bring that exhibit to each of the states, and then also have couples represented in any type of programming that is happening. So if you are someone who works for a nonprofit, you work for a medical facility, you work for maybe infertility counseling, or you work for a fertility clinic, we would love to create the opportunities and spaces for either couples to share their stories, for us to provide information. So definitely a tour, hopefully, very, very soon, because we're ready. As Nat says in the chat, I love to tour. We do. And also, there will be a book that will come out of this at some point. So super excited about that and what that would look like for us. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, see, I told you, we ready for a tour.
Take it on the road. So y'all hear me. If all the folks in the space, if you are looking to host a location, they are ready to tour. So I love that. I believe that was our first question. Do we have any more questions from the chat? We have some love from the chat. Y'all talked a lot about community and family, so I see some of us showing up here. Um, Sierra says that they have learned so much and then loving what they're hearing. Yes, the book. Okay. So another question, do you think it's possible to reimagine reproduction beyond biological frameworks? I'm gonna ask for a follow-up on the question asker. Oh, and some love for hoping for it to stop at LTAS. Thank you. Yeah, shout out to LTAS in the chat here. Ananicia with the drop. Cool.
Repeat the question. I know you're waiting on the follow-up, but what was it?
No, you're fine. Do you think it's possible to reimagine reproduction beyond biological frameworks?
Mm, I mean, when I think about this study, I think in some ways we're already kind of doing that, right? Like there's still science in it. So I think one thing that I've heard from couples that not necessarily participated in our study, but from other couples that were interviewed elsewhere, is that sometimes when we think about heterosexual couples, people can say, oh, like the baby was made during love making or things like that. But there's so much science involved a lot of times with queer couples trying to conceive. And so I think people are getting creative in ways of figuring out how to do that beyond like biological things, I guess. I don't know. I think that's a difficult question.
Okay.
Part of what comes to mind for me is how many times you've already thought about family beyond biological frameworks and how family is often thought about as like only blood-related family, but for so many people, family is friends, like we were talking about, or family can be elders in a community who you might not be related to, but family can mean so many things. And so I think I agree with Dr. Shemeka and how we've already thought broader and thought more widely than how reproduction has been narrowly defined in the past. And this project is kind of continuing to do that, even though, of course, there is still science and biological components involved.
Dr. Praise, that part made me think when you brought up like extended family and friends and stuff like that. It kind of made me think about the phrase like it takes a village and how some folks in the village might not necessarily have their own biological children, but they are strong in a part of the legacy or in a part of supporting the growth and the development of whoever the young people are within the actual community. And so I think about how that contribution, in a sense, to development and to family and to love might possibly be beyond the biological frameworks in a way. It also still extends legacy as well.
And I would say for us as participants, my wife carried, if that wasn't obvious before, but baby Cairo came out looking like me actually, and so I get to live with that every day. But just from the small experience with us at the hospital, in doing the paperwork for the birth certificate, just the progress of saying parent and parent now instead of mother and father like traditional. So that showed progress to us that we're moving forward and not just expecting the traditional heterosexual household or experience that way.
And yes, I'm still stuck on our son coming out looking like her because I still don't understand. It's true. She talked to my belly every single day when I was pregnant. That's the only thing I could think of, but he looks just like her.
It must be true. They say the one that talks and annoys the most, then it's gonna come out looking like so.
Yeah.
I love that. I appreciate that. Okay, so another question that we have in our Q&A is, are there any reoccurring themes or patterns that the research found couples should be aware of?
So one thing that was always talked about was this idea of like timing. So a lot of times people talked about divine timing, relationship timing. It wasn't the right time. So maybe it wasn't the right time in when they thought they were going to conceive versus when they did, you know. And so that's how they dealt with that. Like, oh, it just wasn't the right time. Or we waited this long and now it's divine timing, right? So I think oftentimes people have timelines of what they would like for it to look like, and it doesn't always look that way. But also the relationship timing is important. So we've talked about that already on the panel, and then we had a video about that. But, you know, just making sure you're at the right space in your relationship, whether that's financially, you're in the right space, career-wise, you've reached those goals. So we had some couples that definitely had some travel goals they wanted to knock out before they did this, or buying a house. So sometimes it's those milestones that people wanted to reach before they actually started the family planning process. Um, so that's definitely one thing. Of course, finances. So Rachella, thank you for sharing that, because people were like, yeah, this is expensive. Or maybe they didn't necessarily think about the medications that they might have to cover. Or we had people who were picking up part-time jobs that for places that had great insurance so they could get full coverage. So that was something that was really important for people. And then I think another thing was donor availability. So a lot of people went in and they actually desired to, most of the couples desired to have a Black donor, and some were aware that they weren't going to, and it was a slim chance, while others were not. So I think it's around 4% of donors in fertility clinics are actually Black. And then when you compare that to genetic markers that the gestational parent would have, it reduces your likelihood of having a Black donor. And usually that leaves you with one Black donor, if any. And so it's often very competitive to get a Black donor, either with the genetic markers you have, or everyone, you know, trying to compete for this one donor to get, you know, sperm from them. And so, you know, I think that that's one thing where I see that people oftentimes felt like they had to make compromises in ways that they maybe had not thought about before, or they were like, okay, you know, actually this works, and this is how we're, you know, adjusting in this, or this is beautiful because we want to have a child, right? It doesn't matter if the child is like 100% Black or not, because they got Black parents. And so just being mindful of that. So I think that that's one thing that people weren't necessarily aware of, or was a bit shocking. And so, as Dr. Misha mentioned, we had a couple in Kentucky where they're like, we're going to figure out different ways, because maybe we might not get a Black donor this way, but maybe we get them another way. Okay, we couldn't get one that way because it was a bit risky, so we had to get a donor of another race. So definitely the donor piece, I think, is very important. Um, yeah, and I think just advocating for yourself. I mean, I will say I'm from North Carolina. I currently live in Kentucky, but born and raised in North Carolina. And I will say our North Carolina crew was lucky to have the doctors that they had and have the clinics that they had, because I cannot say that's true for the other couples that were in Georgia and the couples that were definitely not in Kentucky. Um, and so I think having access to doctors where you could walk in a space and not feel like you're othered is important, because I think that was true for a lot of the couples that were either in this space where they were either othered because of their race or othered because of their sexual identity, or both.
And I do kind of just wanted to piggyback off of you, Dr. Shemeka, about the donor, because that is very important. We see often in on social media that the biggest thing right now is that lesbian couples want to have light-skinned kids, and it boils my blood every time I see it, or read comments of people who are not even in our community or even in our lane at all, having an opinion about what they think it is. Our son is Filipino, our donor is Filipino. And like you said, when you scratch off the fact that it's only 4% of African American donors available, with your genetic markings that then cancels out all of them, you are left with what's next. So instead of, you know, everybody wanting the fight of lesbians only want light-skinned kids, nobody wants to talk about why the Black men don't want to donate. You know, so that's a whole nother realm of donate, or can't, even if they're, you know, they meet the qualifications to donate. But for us, we went into this after scratching off everybody that we could not use was we want a healthy child. So we went straight to the medical history of the lineup of whatever and wanted to get the best, cleanest applicant for our child. At the end of the day, we are so intentional being queer parents of starting our family. You know, we're blessed to be intentional of starting our family that, you know, we do think of all of those things. So that was kind of what geared us to choose the donor we chose, was that we wanted the person who had the, after marking out everybody that we could not use, who did have the cleanest history. So it's not that all lesbian couples want light skinned kids. It just that mindset just annoys me so bad. But yes, but to your point, that is a big thing that we always see when it comes to donors. And a lot of people who are not in this field or not in this community, they don't even know what goes into what all we have to do, what all the tests that we do have to take to genetic heterosexual couples are not taking genetic tests before they have kids. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I did meant to mention that whole donor portion of that, because that is very important. But
And I think also to add on that like when we asked the question, Nia, when you asked the question earlier about reproductive justice, that's a reproductive justice issue, because some of the things related to the reasons why we have such a low number of Black donors is related to some of the fertility clinics requirements. So like for some clinics, you have to know 3 generations of family history. Baby, we Black. Sometimes we don't be talking about family health history, right? I'm lucky to know 3 generations of family history. And so like that is a reproductive justice issue. And then sometimes like if you were involved with the criminal justice system, or if you're from certain countries, maybe in Africa that may have high HIV rates, you cannot be a donor, right? Regardless of if you have HIV or not. So there's certain things that just start ruling people out, even if they wanted to. So I do think that that is definitely a reproductive justice issue. And there's been some researchers that are, Dr. Newman is doing more work around that, around Black men's perceptions of fertility donation. And we have to, I mean, sperm donation. And we also have to realize like part of that is related to medical mistrust and all the clinical trials that have been done on us that were unethical, right? So what are you going to do, you know, with the egg or maybe with the donor sperm after it's over? Or how do I know you're going to use it for what I say you're going to use it for? And so I think we have to recognize there's some historical medical trauma there, as well as, hey, now we got to look at Black men, which now SisterSong is doing a great job of focusing on Black men and bringing them into the conversation, especially with, I think, more conversations around this topic as well.
Yeah, we are receiving a lot of comments in the chat, and you're right. Reproductive justice looks like a lot more than what we realize until we're in the middle of it, right? And so I'm grateful for highlighting all of the things that people don't really think about. I wanted to highlight one of the comments in the chat. One of the other barriers is also having to have a degree and unfortunately not be in the gay community outside of Seed Scout. So just adding that to everything that you all were saying. Dr. Praise, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing as well that really came up in some of the interviews that we did, was the fact that it was only when couples were at this point of trying to get pregnant that certain reproductive health concerns were addressed. So, for example, we had a couple, a woman who had very intense fibroids and who had intense pain and who had like very intense painful periods for years. And she went to the doctor and she was dismissed the whole time until she was like, okay, well, me and my wife are trying to get pregnant, went to a different doctor, and that doctor was like, no, that can't even be your concern right now. You have multiple fibroids that we need to get out. And she was like, I've been to doctors in the past, nobody told me anything. They just said that this was normal. And so the fact that in trying to start this fertility journey, having to move, like take some steps and address these reproductive health concerns that should have been caught much sooner is also a reproductive justice issue. Because if those had been addressed sooner, then the timeline piece that we're talking about, the timeline would have been a different way. Like we would have been able to move more quickly, except now you have to take time to address these things that should have been addressed in the past.
Yeah, I appreciate that highlight. This is why we should trust Black women. Not a shout for for SisterSong, but medical mistreatment. Yeah, I'm not gonna get on my soapbox. But okay, so next question, because we do have a few lined up for the next 15 minutes. So were there, sorry, a participant wants to know if there were any solo queer parents in this study. They're curious about what it looks like for queer folks not in committed partnership and seeking to be parents or already parenting outside a traditional co-parent model.
So for the purposes of this study, there was not. However, I know that there's researchers who are interested in a rise of like doctoral students that are doing that work. So that's super exciting to see that being done. Um, I just attended a symposium where someone was doing research on Black women solo moms, and I can't remember their name. But if I can find it, I will send it to Nia. But for the purposes of this study, we didn't look at that. We just specifically looked at couples.
Okay, thank you for that. Cool. So another question, and this question is for Brittany and Rahchella. Um, what do you believe maternal mental health therapists should know and family process with providing services to families in the preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum stage that may be a gap in care currently? And I'm gonna copy and paste this so you all can see it.
Let's see. Let's think about this. Should know family process and providing services to families in the preconception phase. Um, that's a pretty loaded question.
I would just say, specifically in therapy, being able to hold space for any of our experiences that may come up with this process. I know for me being the technically non-biological parent, there's concerns and things and feelings and emotions that sometimes coincide with the process. So being able to speak freely and openly from conception all the way to delivery and birth, and even after that, being a parent and an official toddler world right now. So I would just say, just be available, hold the space that we need. And I'm just speaking for myself. I'll let my wife share her ideas on that, but just holding the space for all things for that experience.
And just to piggyback off of you, I think it is important to have those sessions together and individually, because there may be, I see a lot of people, the biological parent, having feelings around the pregnancy, or vice versa, being the pregnant one, because she isn't feeling it. She doesn't, even though we can express what we're going through, we can't for real say what it is that we're going through. And sometimes it could feel, there could be other feelings that can possibly come with that. So I think that is what's going to be the most important, is holding that space for them, as a couple and as individuals, of not saying afraid, but just not being able to freely express those feelings. Some clinics do require mental health therapy appointments prior to starting the process. Ours did not, but I we have friends that did, um, just to ensure, because there is so much that goes into this process that I can understand why. Um, so I think it is, I think that's the biggest thing, is just going to is going to be holding that space, because um, it is a lot. Yeah.
And I know this question wasn't for us, but I do want to add to that. I think one thing that often came up in our interviews were um, like familial rejection and isolation from family. And so that definitely needs to be accounted for in therapy. Is I think oftentimes it's like, oh, lean on your family when you're going through something. And not everybody had that. And a lot of people didn't, or their family didn't necessarily know how to provide support. It was more or less like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know what to do with that, but like, oh, that sounds hard. So I think there's a different level of support that is needed, because usually Black families are seen as like an anchor, and you don't necessarily have that sometimes when you're going through this process and you're in a same-sex relationship.
Yeah, because our family knew we were going through it, but they don't really know what that means. They don't know what that entails. They don't know I'm doing 5 shots a day for 4 weeks. They don't know they're having to extract my eggs. They don't know that we're spending $3,000 on one sperm, one vial of sperm. They don't understand what that means. So that's a valid point, is that, it is hard to lean on your family, because in the Black community and being queer, they don't know what that is. All of this is new to them as well. So it's kind of, you can't really expect them to be there for you when they don't know how to show up for you. So it was easier for me, I know, not to even have those conversations with my family, because that was going to then lead into a lesson that I really wasn't in a place to have. So it was better to lean on my friends who were going through this process with me, or already going through this process with me, or in your case, a therapist, because that's our only considered safe space at that time.
And I know we're running out of time. So, but I am curious about, even in dissemination, what it looks like to think about how to support your family members who are going through the process. I think that's just my other hat coming in, but thinking about like what it looks like to include that. But our final question from the chat is, um, how has engaging in this study changed your perspective on queer reproduction?
I want to speak a little bit to what that little thought that you had, that little nugget, around how do we actually support our family members who might be trying to support us. And that's another reason why I'm really excited for this tour and this event and this program and this dialogue and the conversation, because the other folks, our family members, our loved ones, if they're a part of the conversation and listening to it and hearing the experiences, engaging with the art, seeing what people are saying on the panels, actually reading what participants said in the studies, it hopefully builds more of a connection with them and allows them to have a little bit of a deeper understanding around what people may be going through. So then they can find other ways to be able to show up and support, or to even be considerate of that. Um, and then to answer the actual question, as a Black lesbian who is going to be a mother at some point in her life, I really got excited about the possibilities that exist, and to know that there are resources and so many different ways to make my heart's greatest desires a reality. Even from just this side of it, it was really, really beautiful. And also to engage with research in this intentional and purposeful and creative and really, really community-centered way really reshaped my relationship with research and academia and scholarship as well. It really is like, yeah, there are possible ways to make it tangible and to have a huge community impact.
For me, I'm not sure how this study has like impacted my perspective on queer reproduction, but it has changed my life. Just being involved in the study, this has been some of the most meaningful work that I've done, research or otherwise, with my career, with my degree, and I think there's just such power in like making room and giving space for folks to really share their stories. Um, like being able to name your experience for yourself is a powerful act of like self-definition. And so to create space for folks to do that and to be part of the holding of that through this research was has been so meaningful. Like one of our couples invited us in like so soon. Like they had a baby like 2 days before, and we were in their house. Like me and Bernice were in their house. What? Like it was just it's been so powerful to be a part of this work, to hold the stories and to have the trust, and to be able to like to see the expansion of this work in different ways, and the ways that it will continue to impact people, all because folks were brave enough to kind of share what they've been through and define their own experiences like out in the world, through this process. So now I'm about to cry. Thank you.
Well, child, I'm already crying, so there's that. I think for me, I don't know if it changed necessarily my perspective, but I do think it allowed me to see that there's, I guess for anybody that has a big dream out there, there's always people that believe in your dreams and will support your dreams. And so I'm thankful for all the sponsors we've had for the work that we've done thus far, for Dr. Misha and Dr. Praise and Nat and Evelyn and April and Bernice for just believing in the project and saying, yeah, Shamika, I know you want to do this. All right, I'll do it with you. So thank you for believing in that and for the couples, for the Washingtons, for being here and being so vulnerable and willing to share stories and having us in your house, giving us Southern hospitality. And I know we have another couple, another participant in the chat and in the room. So I'm just thankful for all the people that believed in this project, believed in my wildest dreams. And this is a reminder to always shoot your shot because you never know who will believe in you. So keep dreaming.
Absolutely. Like Layla said, shooters shoot. Wanted to leave space if the Washingtons had an answer to the question. But if not, it's also okay. Cool. So it is 7:28. We are not gonna hold your space any time past in which you have consented to give us. Um, so just another large thank you to everyone on the panel tonight and to all who joined, registered, and participated via the chat. So grateful for your vulnerability, so grateful for your intention, for your passion, for the way that you center reproductive justice, for the way that you're centering Black families, and for your commitment to this work, for the seeds that you are sowing, for all of those who will be able to eat the fruits. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have some thank yous going in the chat. I have a box of tissue waiting on me on the side. Um, We will be sending everyone's contact and connecting information out in a follow-up email. So if you're looking for ways to stay connected with our panelists tonight and to follow the study and the future of the work and the families, you will receive that information along with a survey to let us know how you liked tonight's conversation about one day after the webinar. So again, it is 7:30. Thank you everyone for joining us today, tonight, and we look forward to continue to build and be in community with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.